This presentation will cover the aesthetic and technological convergence between 2D and 3D animation styles. I will go over said convergence and explain how these mediums have enhanced animation, dissecting some of its innovative processes, showing you, the viewer, why these advancements are valued within the present. I will try my best to cover a grand scope of mediums, such as video games, animated films, television, and others. Now, our technological-based society has enabled animators of all sorts of calibers to allow the collaboration of 2D and 3D spaces. Programs such as Photoshop, Blender, Maya, even Procreate can work in tangent with each other. Even Clip Studio Paint has 3D tools that can be used to aid animators. Firstly, we'll take a dive into some of the processes and how this is actually developed. I'd like to begin this segment by showing you two circles here. Now, I'd like you to guess which one of these spheres is the 2D image and which one is 3D. If you guessed one or the other, congratulations, that is incorrect. You see, both of these spheres are actually 3D. This right here is a simplified version of using 3D tools to convey a 2D aesthetic. With the use of solid colors, a toon shader, and outlining, this can emphasize a 2D look. To those unfamiliar with the term shaders, this refers to the compositing of textures, nodes, and other options within the 3D environment on the model in question. In this case being a circle. Now let's look at a more complex version of this actually within the field. Here we'll be covering 3 different IPs. In this first section we'll be looking at the use of vertex normals and outlining. Our example for today will be Arc System Works Guilty Gear series, specifically Guilty Gear Sign. Guilty Gear Sign is a 2.5D fighting game. Unlike other successes of this genre, such as Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, which pertain to a more 3D realistic approach, Guilty Gear visuals pastiche the look of traditional 2D Japanese animation styles. Now, in order for this look to be achieved, the developers had to employ some interesting techniques in the 3D space to make it have a 2D look. Within Guilty Gear's game engine, there is a unique direction-based lighting system. This is calculated by its shaders. Now, one problem that can arise is how certain aspects of how shadows appear. Here is an example from an interview that Arc System did, where they showed off what their models would look like without this unique system in place. This is where vertex normals comes into play. When the 3D models are being created, how the model's shadows transition over lighting direction is automatically done. However, this can be edited via the vertex normals, in which the vertices, meaning the fundamental building blocks of the models, can be rotated manually to make the transitions for the shadows more snappy and sharp or smooth and seamless. Patterns can also be imprinted this way, achieving a desired look. Using the shader and adding some outlines, we can gain an appearance that is very toon-like. These outlines can be emphasized whether for dramatic effect or to convey more movement. Speaking of movement, let's move on to movement and texture. We will be looking at the well-critically acclaimed Netflix series Arcane, based on the League of Legends franchise.
Half a dozen enforcers, dead!
Arcane is set in a utopian world where two sisters are on opposing sides of a conflict between the rich and the oppressed. Where Arcane is held highly regarded for is their use of 2D digitally painted textures. The look they achieve using this with its 3D assets is akin to a paint-like spectacle. Here's an example of a before and after when these textures are fully applied on with its seamless lighting system. The animators' intentions were to adapt their previous existing characters from their digital paintings and adapt them into a 3D formula.
Everyone wants to spend a little bit of time up close and personal, and cinematics are sort of a way to provide that like high fidelity, close-up experience with the characters in the world.
Onto the movement aspect. Unlike a handful of 3D animation, they stick to using keyframing instead of motion capture. Criticisms that can be said using motion capture is that characters feel stiff and almost uncanny valley when they move. Therefore, they apply techniques such as squash and stretch to convey exaggerated expressions and movement. In fact, I was convinced that Arcane used motion capture. However, I personally did not feel disturbed by the uncanny valley. Therefore, that made me do some more research, in which I found out that they do not use motion capture. This is very similar to some of the old Mickey Mouse cartoons. But why take this stylistic approach and not go for a more Disney, Pixar look of 3D animation? I think some of these set pieces can speak for themselves.
We all sin. If I bring a couple rounds with me, then we all win. I came back and brought the crown with me. The king's dead. Break your necks and take your neck, cause everybody's on your head. This might kick your butt, go run them up, then pay my nail. Never learned to raise my hand. Was too busy raising hell. Everything I know I am. You should go and save yourself. Thought you had my number, huh? Congratulations, played yourself. Underground utopia, dynasties in dystopia. Fear is never an option. Sometimes it's not a real phobia.
This convergence focuses so much on the emphasis of movement and aesthetics. With Tarzan's 2D drawings over 3D rendered backgrounds, it's complex, immersive, and very intuitive. Meanwhile, to the likes of Arcane showing off the digital paint brush strokes on its characters, showing the artistic personality, but not being afraid to hide such details in order to focus more on feeling and emotion. Then we have Guilty Gear. Actions are powerful and fast, carrying a lot of weight. And we have Klaus, more gentle and goes for a soft and nostalgic approach. Its soft rigged lighting captures that Christmas feel that it wants to get across to its audience. The feeling of warmth and safety. This employs 3D aesthetics onto 2D animation with its lighting. Therefore, the characters themselves feel like 3D models, but in actuality, all the animation in Klaus is 2D. Although an author by the name of Jane Pilling talks about how disciplines and orthodoxies within animation are changing due to technology, which is prompting the new inventions that essentially is getting rid of traditional means of animation to fit in with society's wants and agenda. However, with the convergence between 3D and 2D spaces, it captures that original traditional love and passion and transforms it into its own thing with the new technologies employed. There is no need to actually conform with those orthodoxies. At least not fully. To conclude, the takeaway I want from this is to hopefully show off an understanding of the mixture of these forms. What I want to take with it into my own work is emphasize that old movement that traditional animation had into newer forms that more people can enjoy.